Good afternoon, everyone. I think we've passed that afternoon mark. So lovely to be here and looking forward to a great conversation. Since the introductions are done, I think we can dive straight in. We're talking about taking deep tech from lab to market. And in that journey, there is what we all talk about to be the first valley of death, right, for deep tech startups. There are possibly two or three, usually in the journey of building a deep tech startup and scaling it up. The first one is when technology proven in the lab, but it does not reach its desired outcomes in the commercial world, in the industry. And that's a very big challenge that we all have to watch out for and navigate, right, as different stakeholders in the ecosystem. And we have this eminent panel here who've all spent a fair bit of time in different capacities, looking at this problem very closely. So I'll dive straight in and possibly talk about, when we talk about lab technology, or technology in the lab and research, our mind goes to academic institutions where this research has taken shape, sometimes for 3 years, sometimes for 5 years, sometimes for 10 years, sometimes longer, right? And what we are seeing in the last 5 years is a lot of this research now has real-world applications. And some of these researchers, academicians, and professors, et cetera, are thinking about starting companies, right? So I want to shine light and spend time talking about the mindset first, right? What does it take for somebody with the research mindset in academia and in research for many years to think about starting a company and then taking it commercial, right? And I'm going to put the spotlight first on Nat, you, given that you're running one of the leading research innovation parks in this country, which is IIT Madras Research Park, and obviously that has led the way in many commercialization areas. So I want to hear your thoughts on where the challenges lie on mindset particularly.
Sure, thank you. So I think that is the fundamental shift as we talk about this whole spectrum from TRL 1 to 9. I think we historically have done fabulous work within the technology institutes to do some good fundamental research that sits within the labs. But the motivation was, at least at scale, was never to go up all the way to TRL 9. A lot of times it's you apply for a grant, you do some great work, you get some enough PhD scholars, and this becomes a crucible for doing that fundamental research there. But I think things have shifted in the last decade or so. We begin to see more and more push. I think the window itself has shifted where you're beginning to see what can this lead to, right? A lot of industry participation saying, I could use this to solve a societal problem. I could put this to use for a defense-related product that we want to take to market. So you begin, I think the pull is very strong from the industry and the market as well. And you begin to see more and more entrepreneurs, not necessarily starting with the faculty, but really entrepreneurs, B.Tech students coming out and saying, I can take my thesis, my project, and commercialize it. And I think we've provided enough of a safety net for them to try it and convert the project into a commercial entity. And I think we'll talk more about it in detail. And I think the follow-on effect has been faculties also following along. And I think that's how I saw that. And IIT Madras, we have a fabulous numbers to speak of it. About 30–40% of the faculty are some way involved in this kind of industry-academia collaboration, with several of them being co-founders as well. So one is the institution incentivizing it, right? Making it a cultural shift to say, it is okay for you to go and run your company. Your academic load can be reduced to make it happen. I think that's one shift that's required. And as they interact more with some of the corporates, there's a very interesting interaction that happens. They come from very different vantage points. The faculty believe they have all the answers, but industry throws different problems at them because, best academia does not necessarily work in industry conditions, right? That's what the translational research is all about. So I think that begins to happen in a research park setting where we talk about how some of the principles that they offer has other constraints that need to be solved for. And that becomes a basis for applied research, translation research going to market. So I think the mindset shift is still a work in progress, right? One is, we're still talking about technology. But as you get into an incubation mode, that scientists and engineers and so on don't have all the skills to run this as a commercial enterprise, to say, I have a great solution, but is there a customer for it, right? Market discovery, customer discovery, the financial aspect of it, go to market. These are things that they don't necessarily enjoy, but as an ecosystem, we've actually put pressure on them to say, you shall do everything. We'll teach you how to become a business savvy person. And I think we are rethinking some of those as well. So the mind shift is two things. One is wanting them to be more entrepreneurial, but also supporting them to say, we still want you to do what you're really good at, which is continue to do research and go up the TRL curve while we support you with the right cash to take you to business. So I'm going to stop with that for now.
No, thanks so much, Nat. And that's a critical part, right? You don't want these IP creators and innovators to let go of their core, which is building great technology, but at the same time, you want to marry that with what the commercial needs and the solutions needed in the market are. Dr. Srikanth, I'll possibly make you wait a little longer if that's okay, but Poyni, if that's, come to you and you want to add to that and possibly layer your experiences with advising so many startups, even
Sure.
from the sign experience of yours, and what else do you think are challenges, and if you look back 10 years or 5 years, and what has changed?
Yeah, I think so. What has changed, I'll tell you. Until recently in academia, researchers were doing research pretty much at in isolation. Yeah, and deep tech require multidisciplinary approach, and that realization has come. So one way is that now there are groups that is basically forming in academic center to work on particular research. That has changed quite a bit, but that was quite a challenge, because who begins and how do you reach out and collaborate it's not an easy process in academic setup. That's one thing. Second thing was that Nat talk about TRL 1 to 9. And academia, most academia are very good, maybe up to 5 or 6 level, but when it comes to taking seriously out, it requires a different business expertise. But while even in this TRL 1 to 6 level or further on, I think you require even business validation very early on. And that has to come at TRL 3 or 4 level. And that, going out of the lab, going to potentially, end user, get the validation, working in collaboration, I think that thing needs to really happen at very early on, rather than you go to TRL level 5 and 6 and wait, and then even if partners come, perhaps you realize that this is not the need and you start pivoting at a research level. That doesn't work. So I think in deep tech especially, validation of research from commercial viewpoint needs to basically accelerate at early stage and much faster.
I think that's a great point, and that's obviously what both IIT Madras and Sign IITB and many other centers are enabling, because it makes it easier for you to go and figure out that bridge between commercial application.
Yeah.
Therefore, coming to you,
just to add it here, because many of you or many of entrepreneurs here in this audience may not be from academia. So point for them is that scout for such researchers and see the collaboration potential out there.
I think that's a critical part. I think collaboration is the key at the heart of all of this. Maybe finding the right co-founder. Maybe you're not in the institute, but you can go to the institute and find a co-founder or find an academic partner or research partner. And then, of course, looking for the commercial side. And this is the right time to bring you in, Dr. Srikanth. You had a very interesting journey being on the medical side of things and then being an entrepreneur trying to solve for climate change, right? Talk a little bit about your journey and what you have experienced to be, what it takes to build a company of this nature in the deep tech, and what challenges you face along the way and what you are solving for.
Sure, thanks, Arjun. I think adding to what Nat and Poyni had said, you definitely need collaboration. You need that proper environment, like what you would have at IIT Madras. My own background is, I was lucky enough to study at places like Stanford, Harvard, cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic, and there I worked with companies like GE Healthcare, Siemens, Philips Healthcare, making the next generation technologies. I moved to India in 2008, and what made me come from cardiology into clean tech is actually a personal story. And it's that personal stories that will drive you through those hard, dark days when you're a startup founder. For me, what happened is I had come from the United States. I wanted to serve. I work at Satyasai Hospital here in Bangalore. It's a free hospital, charity hospital. My first week, I saw a young fellow, 28 years of age. He was a shoe cobbler repairing sandals on the street, and he came in with a heart attack due to air pollution. So we did his angioplasty operation, and I patted myself on the back afterwards. I said, hey, this is exactly why I came here, to serve my country. And now this guy, he actually walked out of the hospital and took a bus back home. Now, 2 days later, the same thing happened. This time it was a 32-year-old young man. He was a taxi driver, breathing in vehicle fumes all day long. He also had a heart attack, a big one. We also did his angioplasty operation to open that blocked artery, but he died on the operating table right in front of me, and there's nothing we can do. And afterwards, I had to go out and explain to his wife, who is now his widow, they had a small daughter and his two parents, I'm sorry, we did everything we could, but we couldn't save him. And that got me to thinking, you know, I'm a cardiologist, I have a lot of skills, but how many angioplasties can I do in a day? It's a drop in the bucket. Let's see if we can prevent this. And with my technology background, we were then able, long story short, to build a technology that improves air quality across large areas. We turned it 10 years later into a climate tech company, which is now India's most awarded climate tech company, and we're moving forward. But it's that personal story that's going to keep you moving forward in those tough times.
Could you also throw some light on, given that you've sort of seen the ecosystems in Stanford, et cetera, and then, of course, now here, you know, what can we learn from there? What do we have to do better in this, you know, taking cutting-edge technology to the masses or to commercial applications from a mindset perspective, continuing on the same trend? You know, what is lacking here, if you will, for all of us collectively as an ecosystem?
I don't think it's really a lack. I think India has everything that we need to succeed, and probably we're in a much better situation now than many other countries. Having said that, though, what I always tell my team, it's always about quality, 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 quality. Whether you're doing this much work or you're doing this much work. And you know, we heard from the last speaker about scaling. What I worry about as a startup founder, I'm always optimistic that my product, my technology, my company will scale, but I'm always pessimistic that my team will be able to scale. It's a difference, right? You know that your company is going to grow. You're going to make it grow. You're going to ensure that it does. But at the same time, you're looking in the corner saying, is my product manufactured as good as it can be? Is the product quality uniform throughout? That pessimism, that doubt has to come in place so that you make sure that you don't miss anything. As a doctor, if I go and do a heart surgery, you better believe that I check every small detail, right? And the same thing has to happen when you're developing and building product.
No, that's a great point. And maybe tugging on that and, you know, bringing it back to Nat, what have you seen as traits, right, in the research community, so to speak, as they turn thinking commercial, right? And some of these aspects that Dr. Srikanth spoke about, that possibly what can be done for them to learn those or adapt those sooner in their cycle, so that there is, you know, a faster, you know, ability to solve those problems. There is less pitfalls along the way, right? They obviously are good at their science and tech, but what on the commercial side and the thinking side can be brought to these founders earlier?
Absolutely. And I think I'll also preface this with this whole valley of death, right? I mean, I think somebody said that we are experts in conquering it. And I think valley of death is for real, right? I don't think the idea is to flatline it and, you know, overcome it. I think it's more about how do we navigate it, right? I mean, in some ways, it's about a risk-taking, right? We're taking the most ambitious ideas and trying to move it forward. And there are several such brilliant entrepreneurs who are going after different solutions to go after the same problem. And as we come up the curve, some of them work out and some of them don't, right? Because of various other things related to prototyping and proof of concept and the economics of it and so on. So the idea is not to think so much and live in this fear of valley of death. I think it's really about passion, like Dr. Srikanth said. It is really about that personal connect and saying that, why do I believe this problem is worth solving, right? And what do I fundamentally have in terms of science or engineering or whatnot that lends itself to solving this problem? And I think, like somebody said in the earlier conversation about the 20s and 40s, I think the support system has become more sophisticated, right? There are grants available. The government is opening up between ANRF and DSD and so on. There are just different ways of lubricating our innovation ecosystem, and the research park and different incubators, which is not just top tier, but several others in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. I think there is an ecosystem that's opening up to feed and nurture some of these ideas, right? But I think in terms of the dominant traits, we certainly need risk-taking, right? Going away from looking for employment to being entrepreneurial, and there are pros and cons to it. We can get to it if we have time. But we certainly need to say, I am in love with this technology, and I want to put it to better use, thinking first principles and saying, what can I build on top of it? Similar to the promote conversation, what do we already have that we can build on top of, right? A launch pad and a platform, not having to do everything from scratch. I think that is something that we do need to do enough of, because with some entrepreneurs we really see, or even faculty, they're very wedded to my way. This is what I want to do. I take great pride in it. To an extent, there is no transparency in terms of what can help serve the broader ecosystem. So I think that is something that we are trying to tweak and change. We need to build incentives around it. The other thing is about the IP itself. We talk about, as we think of valley of death, there is a significant drop-off in terms of going from TRL 3 to 7 to then going all the way to market, right? There is, and the world over, not just India, right? And India, it's worse. In India, we try to make the comparison between the patents granted and patents filed again, right? Again, what you see in corporate is a slightly different metric, maybe at a 40-50% grant ratio. In academia, it's slightly lesser, much lesser. I think this is where I think we need to get better as an academia compared to the Stanfords and MITs and UC Berkeley's. How good a sophisticated machinery do we have within the campus to give them a template, right? Once you put in an idea, you have an assembly line that gives you, the legal tech, the exploration that you do about competitive products, the novelty, and those are all traits that you need to imbibe even as a researcher. Forget the commercialization part. And then comes the commercialization, right? You're talking about how could I put this idea to use in the market? And you have to realize you're not the all-in-all person, right? You need to bring in co-founders, which is a huge problem. As you look at incubators, a lot of companies go astray because they don't have another co-founder. They're not willing to bring somebody along because that match isn't there. So we go to Lens to talk about how do you get a co-founder, because it is lonely at the top. Being an entrepreneur is a very, very tough journey in DeepTech especially. So bringing in some of the traits by building the ecosystem where you do a cohort, where they talk to each other and kind of build and go to market and fundraising, all of that, right? So the things we do, but it is really, really hard. And I think we're getting much better because of so many incubators are doing this. But I think that's the biggest problem. I think, and again, the other last stat I'd leave you with is, I think Startup India probably published it, right? But 92% of the startups don't go through the incubator. But the metric is, when you go through an incubator, your survival ratio is much better, given that you have a cohort to help support you, not just the techniques, but even the emotional support in terms of how to run a company on your own and so on. So those are traits that I would look for.
No, thanks for sharing. I think the co-founder part definitely resonates, and it's very critical. It is very easy to think about it as giving up equity, if you will, but it is more important to think about growing the pie and therefore getting in with somebody with complementary skill sets. And Poyni, maybe you can talk about that aspect and the collaboration aspect that you're very passionate about on the industry side. One, how can you leverage either domain experts, whether it is full-time as co-founders or as advisors? You advise a lot of companies personally yourself, right? And then also your point of view on, is the industry conducive enough, ready, and as an early customer and adopter of technology from a startup, right? They're very used to buying from established businesses, if you will, and therefore there's a safety net, right? But working for the industry from that perspective, how do you advise the startups that you work with?
Right. So I think I take this industry piece first. Now you see, I think I would have dealt with at least 30, 40 industry during my time within Sign itself, yeah. And there are more than 100 industry, they are like having some kind of open innovation or startup program and all those stuff. So the interest of industry in 2 decades, like where they were not even engaging with academia and now they are also engaging with startup. There's a significant shift out there. Has it made easy for startup to go and sell? And especially like, you know, deep tech startup that are coming from academia, I think there are challenges. It's not so easy. It has not been made so easy. Number of reasons, starting with like, you know, lack of early validation out there, so that's one aspect. Another is that the readiness of the solution and the pace at which it is working and then industry needing it, that is another thing. Even after needing lots of tweaking and all those things, and then there is a long cycle out there. So there is a whole set of challenges involved, typically for all startup, and same thing is for that. But the interaction part, the cohort within the industry, the validation part, I think it has been significantly improved out there. So that's one thing. I think the other question was that how this co-founder and all those things. I think that is a constant juggle within academia. It's not easy. There are only 2 ways to go about it. One is that the team, the group that is working on it, they become co-founder and each of them basically assume role, like, you know, internal role, external role, customer-facing role, operational role, and it has been done in academia. Actually, it is not impossible to do that, but it's very rare thing that has happened, yeah? So I'll give you example, Certimac Mechatronics that came out of IIT Bombay, like early 2008. The sole motivation of the founders was to keep the group intact, yeah? And then one assumed the role of technology, another assumed the role of operation. Srikanth Suryanarayan, who was a faculty member, very uncharacteristic, but he assumed the role of industry-facing, customer-facing role, yeah? So it has been done, but it is not easy to get complementary skill set coming out of academia. It's not easy. And more than, like, one is that you were talking about the mindset, right? Researchers are always researchers, and again, jaake sell karna hai, to wo bhi thoda mindset issues are there. The challenge on getting team members from outside, you need to have complementarity, competence, chemistry, yeah, common vision. So that is like, you know, always like trial and error, and it works out. But sooner they get involved, better it is for them, because they start knowing each other. And that, I think within Sign, we did it very consciously on that.
I think something that we also see as early stage investors, right? Trying to complete the team, if you will. And of course, it's never complete because you're always building, but at least the core founding team or the early team, where do you get the, you know, cross-referencing of talent and expertise is very, very critical, and that's a hard problem to solve for. But maybe we have only a couple minutes left. We talk about the capital piece of the challenge, if you will, for these companies to finally see scale and growth and, you know, success. Obviously, at the early stages, the government is doing a fair bit of things on grants in different categories and sectors and subsectors of defense, of deep tech. But you need scale-up capital. There's some venture capital available in the seed, pre-Series A, Series A stage. But all of your perspective on capital availability at different stages, and then for the research-oriented founders, again, to tap into capital. How should they think about different sources of capital? And maybe start with the entrepreneur first on this question.
Sure, I think as an entrepreneur, you should always be fundraising. I mean, there's just no way about it. When it comes to product development, when it comes to research, when it comes to building your company, if it's not about the money, it's about the money. Honestly, that's how it works. And so one of your responsibilities as a co-founder is literally to always be fundraising. And you're looking at the next fundraise, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24 months down the road, you're always preparing. There is good capital. but it is getting smarter. Perhaps it is not as patient capital as what we deep tech startups would like, especially for someone like me where I work in climate tech, where the gestation period is very long. I think, Nat, you probably see this a lot as well in your field. So a little bit more patient capital, but if you're a startup founder, always be fundraising.
No, that's a critical feedback. Always be fundraising. On the patient capital side, quick comment, as a fund manager, I can say, hey, there's a lot of funds out there having a healthy, ongoing conversation about increasing fund life, right? And of course, there are expectations and stakeholders to take care of. You know, it's typically 8+ years. It's going to 10 years, 12 years. There's even conversations about going to 15 years, depending on the nature of the capital, source of the capital. But it's starting to happen. Hopefully, we'll see more. But Nat.
Yeah, quickly, I think this is a controversial topic in some sense. When you talk to the VCs, they say there are a lot of funds, we are ready to invest, but there's not good investable companies. But if you talk to startups and who we see a lot of, it is quite a challenge for them to get the capital. And I think I completely echo what Srikanth said. As founders, you always need to be looking for capital. But I'll have a slightly different spin on it also. I think we are pushing companies to go after revenues and capital, right? I mean, it's not either or at all for sure, but really making sure that you really focus on building something of value, establishing the prototype, the POC, let the orders come in, particularly when you're sitting in a place like a research park, people do have visibility to what you do. So it's really about not doing shortcuts, making sure your product quality does not suffer, like the point that was made earlier. And this is something that's been a big problem for us. We know pharmaceutical companies who come and set up labs in India, not because we have great minds, which we do, but the cost of setting up a similar lab in the US or Switzerland is a lot more, right? Because the certifications that's required to set up a wet lab or a clean lab, whatnot, is much more. And ours are slightly different. In this case, it's probably good because we're getting something to market quicker. But I think our companies and entrepreneurs need to start thinking about certifications, compliance, BIS. What is it that the large companies look for, right? Because they have a lot more at stake. They have a lot more to lose by taking the punt on a startup which does not stand up to a good component in a Maruti Suzuki or a Tube Investments or Murugappa Group, whatever. So I think we need to really be thinking those things even from day one onwards. It can't wait till you decide to scale up, right? So I think those are important things from a revenue standpoint. But in capital, you'll have to be really inventive. Go after grants whenever they are available. Go after catalytic capital. There are some like you who take an early bets on these companies. But really start thinking about a robust product where you can call the shots, then really going after funds.
No, absolutely. I think we have to be creative and always be fundraising. Poyni, last word on this for you.
I think time is up.
But last word.
So that's my last word. Time is up. But okay, I think when it comes to capital, it is not just VC. Especially in academia and deep tech, you have to look at the whole value chain of the capital: grant, funding, CSR, industry capital, VC coming in. Yeah. VC capital still struggle, but I guess some of you are solving that problem, coming very early on this thing. Hopefully it will continue. I'll stop here.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely conversation. Appreciate the time.